Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Tonight, we still don't know the full scope of the damage in Turkey and Syria, and that's where some local researchers come in. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. 1 week since the devastating earthquakes, researchers from California heading out to survey the scene, while others are here at home collecting data. KPBS education reporter MG Perez talked to one of them.
It can move in all 6 degrees of freedom, so it can translate in the 3 directions, and then it can rotate like yaw, pitch, roll.
Structural engineering professor Lely Vandeninde uses her hands to explain the power of the famous shake table at UC San Diego. It's really just a 40-foot long, 25-foot wide steel plate with a heavy hydraulic system that recreates earthquakes. Here, the earthquake that's coming will challenge the strength of a mass timber structure, testing that could have identified buildings that crumbled so easily just a week ago, half a world away.
Right now, we've got people on the ground looking at the structures and the failures and looking at the actual design code and the buildings and trying to assess where the weaknesses are at this point.
The destruction in Turkey and Syria is already being surveyed by a team from the Earthquake Engineering Research Institute based at UC Berkeley. Structural engineers look at more than just the height of a building or what it's made of. The ground it sits on is important too. There will be lessons learned in Turkey that can be helpful here in California.
Every time we correct the code and make things stronger or better or more ductile, more resilient, it sometimes introduces a weaker section somewhere else. And the earthquake is known to find the weakness in our buildings.
That's what makes the UCSD shake table so valuable. Data collected over the next several weeks will eventually find its way back to California and into solutions that could someday save lives in San Diego or any other community if and when the big one hits. Until then, there are decades of earthquakes to learn from.
In 1994, there was the Northridge earthquake, and before that, the code had touted this amazing connection detailed for steel buildings, and then the earthquake showed that it didn't perform. We hadn't designed them as we had expected, and there was a whole history of research that was done for like decades afterwards.
Like doctors, engineers also have a code of ethics with a priority to do whatever it takes to preserve life whenever possible and to learn from the loss that is left behind. MG Perez, KPBS News.
Meanwhile, rescuers have been working tirelessly to reach people still stuck amid the rubble. Even 1 week since the earthquakes, several adults and children have been found alive. In a video shared by the Turkish health minister, rescuers can be seen placing an oxygen mask on a young girl, and they promised her strawberry milk and bagels. The border wall at Friendship Park is back under construction. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayers says that is not welcome news to advocates who want to keep it as a space for families and friends to reconnect.
Friendship Park is the historic binational meeting place at the westernmost end of the U.S.-Mexico border. It's long been divided by a border fence, and now U.S. Customs and Border Protection is building new higher walls after temporarily pausing construction last August. John Fanistill is an advocate with Friends of Friendship Park.
Construction is beginning today on the 2 30-foot walls that will, unless something happens to stop them, that will be stretched across the face of Friendship Park.
The government faced a local outcry when initial plans called for eliminating the gates at Friendship Park that allow families on both sides of the border to meet. In a statement to KPBS, U.S. Customs and Border Protection said its work will provide much-needed improvements and that visitors will be able to access the park once construction is done, assuming it's operationally safe to do so.
The construction of a 30-foot wall to replace that 18-foot fence will eliminate the views into the park And many people will arrive down there without ever realizing that there's a public meeting place at all.
Friendship Park has been closed to the public on the U.S. side of the border since 2019. Replacement of the fencing is expected to take 6 months. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
San Diego State University is dealing with a reported case of Legionnaire's disease. The university closed the Exercise and Nutritional Sciences building today as it investigates the report and a member of the campus community. SDSU's Environmental Health and Safety team is working with the County Health and Human Services Agency to identify and confirm the source of the disease. The school says the patient is away from campus and no connection to the campus has yet been established. The disease can cause cough, fever, shortness of breath, and can be carried through water systems. New information is starting to emerge about multiple unidentified objects shot down by the U.S. in recent days. Ivan Rodriguez reports on why we may see more high-altitude encounters in the future.
3 days, 3 more objects shot down by the U.S. over North America. This all after a Chinese surveillance balloon was destroyed off the coast of South Carolina last weekend.
It's very clear that at least in one instance, we've had a testing of the American and Canadian air defense systems.
On Friday, an American F-22 shot down an object over Alaskan airspace. Saturday, an unidentified object was downed over northern Canada. And Sunday afternoon, a high-altitude object was shot near Lake Huron, Michigan, all by U.S. forces. U.S. intelligence said the objects weren't manned, didn't appear to have propulsion power, and didn't pose a threat to people on the ground.
Their altitudes were considerably lower than the Chinese high-altitude balloon and did pose a threat to civilian commercial air traffic. And while we have no specific reason to suspect that they were conducting surveillance of any kind, we couldn't rule that out.
U.S. authorities will now sharpen their security focus on that lower-level airspace going forward.
They have modified the filters and the gains, as we call it, of the radar capabilities to look more discreetly at high altitude, small radar cross section, and low speed objects.
We know that lots of nation states fly drones, and at least one of these might be a drone and not a balloon. Unclear to me at this point. We will find out.
Ivan Rodriguez, KPBS News.
Some good news for those who received a middle-class tax refund. The IRS issued guidance on state tax payments that affirms Californians will not have to count the refund as income on their federal tax filings. Republicans in the state Senate and Assembly formally requested that President Biden exempt the 18 million residents who received refunds from being taxed at the federal level. Many California taxpayers had delayed filing their 2022 returns while waiting for an answer. UC San Diego is heading up an effort to make computer chips a lot smarter and faster. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge has this story about a project called Prism.
When you work with big computer data, you run into a bottleneck. Moving the data from storage to processing takes way too long. UCSD's Tayana Shimonich-Rosing calls it a fundamental problem.
When you analyze big data, such as new machine learning models, what ends up happening is you end up spending more than 90% of the time moving data to the computer.
The solution is to make computer chips that process and store data a lot smarter.
The idea of the center is to really create both software and hardware that will make the processing as close to data as possible. So that way it can run a lot faster and we can waste a lot less time.
The center Rosing talks about is called Prism, the Processing with Intelligent Storage and Memory Center, founded in January and led by UC San Diego. The $50 million operation involves 10 universities. It's mostly funded by the Semiconductor Research Corporation, an industry and academic partnership. Examples of the computer bottleneck include one that's well known to KPBS TV, the large amount of time it takes to send a data-heavy video file to a computer to be processed and mined for video clips. Rosing suggests a future alternative using better computer chips.
What you would ideally like to do is you would like to send a little question. Find me a clip when somebody talks about new computer chip design and send me only that clip.
That request, she added, would go out to wherever the video is stored. The clip would be found and sent, while the huge file could stay where it is. Rosing also says the time it takes to identify effective experimental drug compounds buried in huge stores of data now takes years. She says with better computer chips, it could take days. How long will Prism take to create a better computer chip?
The goal is to have this figured out by 5 years from now. So hopefully in 5 years, you will see some really exciting demonstrations.
Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
Motorcycle racing is a dangerous sport, and a North County company says its gear is the best in the world at protecting riders. But it's also in high demand for an unexpected profession. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado shows us what they're doing to protect those who protect and serve.
That's the sound of a cutting machine at Motoport USA in Escondido. It's cutting Kevlar mesh one piece at a time. And then each piece is carefully sewn into a pair of protective pants that are made to order. Those pair of pants could protect a rider from serious injury.
I survived. It was definitely the worst crash I've ever had.
I had a lot of good friends that died racing motorcycles.
Wayne Boyer is the owner of Motoport USA and a former competitive rider. But making competitive riding gear isn't his only business. Boyer says in the 90s he found another market in local police departments.
I was really shocked to see that they're wearing just cotton polyester shirts and pants that have virtually no tear abrasion strength, and these guys were crashing and getting serious injuries from not wearing protective clothing.
Now, 75% of his business is making protective gear for motorcycle officers across the country.
We have 5 woven threads on the inside. It's called a safety lock stitch. And we double stitch over the top. So we have far higher, over a 2,000-pound seam strength. So these police officers can hit the ground at 100 miles an hour and the gear doesn't disintegrate. It protects, it holds together.
In 2014, the Oklahoma Highway Patrol Motorcycle Unit adopted the Kevlar uniform. Since that time, we've seen it save lives and prevent serious injury to not only our motorcycle troopers, but other officers within the state.
The most recent customer for the family business is the San Diego Police Department. Motorcycle officer Matthew Zeitz proposed the uniform upgrade after doing a lot of research and talking to colleagues in other departments.
I spoke to one of the officers who worked on Chula Vista Police Department, who went down at about 30, 35 miles an hour, slid across the road, and I looked at it and I couldn't even tell that he had been on the ground, yet he went sliding across the asphalt with these pants on, and the pants weren't torn, ripped, scratched. They looked like he hadn't even been on the ground, so that's what sold me.
Zeitz says it was long overdue.
I have pictures of the motor unit from the 1920s, and it was essentially the same uniform. It's very reassuring knowing that we're in a safer uniform, a uniform designed to be worn while we're riding a motorcycle.
And a uniform designed specifically for the officer who will wear it. Members of Boyer's family all help with the process, taking orders, doing books, and even measuring the customers as they come in.
Hi, my name is Wayne.
Joe.
Hi, Joe. Good to meet you. Robbie, do you want to start with him?
Boyer's son-in-law, Robbie, takes measurements. Out-of-town customers can get measured online. Exact fit is crucial for protection, and there's no mass production here. Every uniform is made one at a time, which means it takes time.
We have almost 3.5 months wait for a police officer when he places an order. So that's one of our biggest problems, is supply and the demand.
But Boyer says he would rather take his time and make sure things are done right. There was a time when manufacturing was done by other companies, but then one of those suits failed. Boyer says using the wrong thread meant a customer got hurt.
And we found out that the company ran out of thread, so they just grabbed the regular cotton poly thread. So basically, we really couldn't control the manufacturing, where when it was in-house, we could make sure that it's made with the right threads. Everything is correct.
So now all the work is done in Escondido by employees like Reina Valdovinos, who runs the cutting machine, making the perfectly sized pieces.
When I drive in, I saw people in the police wearing the uniforms, and I'm so happy and I'm glad to make that kind of stuff for the people. That one is that I spent 30 years here.
That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're amazing.
It costs $3,100 to outfit an officer with several uniforms, but those uniforms will last for years and could save lives.
And we get about 4 motors a month that crash, and we usually get a testimonial form, or they'll come in and shake my hand and thank me personally. I've even had wives and kids of the officers thank me many times, and it really does make me feel great.
Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
Teens, especially girls, are experiencing more violence, suicidal thoughts, and mental health challenges. That's according to the latest survey from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The responses collected in fall of 2021 offered the first look at trends since the start of the pandemic. 57% of teen girls felt persistently sad or hopeless, double the rate of teen boys. LGBTQ teens also had worse mental health than their heterosexual peers.
Almost a third of LGBTQ+ students were bullied online. Almost a quarter were bullied at school. And more than 1 in 10 did not go to school because of safety concerns. Tragically, almost half seriously considered suicide, and nearly 1 in 4 attempted suicide. This is devastating.
Nearly a third of teen girls seriously considered attempting suicide, and the CDC says the new data underscores significant declines in youth health and well-being overall. School staff across San Diego County are participating in training sessions for student mental health awareness this week. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman says the San Diego County Office of Education put the series together.
Anxiety and depression, they're often co-occurring.
The Office of Education began hosting their student mental health webinar series during the pandemic. Sessions for school staff include depression and anxiety in youth, building stronger relationships, eating disorders, and the connection between vaping, cannabis, and mental health.
We want to increase mental health literacy for all staff in a school campus so that there are all these caring eyes and ears on students. Everyone has common knowledge, common understanding of what are some warning signs, what to look out for.
Heather Namor is the Office of Education's coordinator of student wellness and school culture. She says one goal is to help reduce stigma.
Having that caring, empathetic, compassionate approach and building those relationships with students to open the door to have those conversations. And really just in the end, of course, guiding them to support if needed.
For the first time, there's also a mental health webinar series for parents. The sessions are in partnership with Scripps Health and Rady Children's Hospital.
We've been seeing rates of mental health just increasing and increasing, and teachers in our schools are the front line of this crisis.
Willow Jenkins is a medical director at Rady's. She's leading the discussion on the connection between cannabis, vaping, and mental health.
Nicotine withdrawal can cause anxiety, can cause irritability and depression, and if parents and teachers don't know that their students are using these things, they might not know what's going on.
There's also a focus on eating disorders, which Jenkins says have been on the rise.
Eating disorders are considered a mental health disorder, so they're considered in that category. And the reason for it is that a lot of the behavior around eating is fueled by different psychological processes. And depending on your family and your stress, you're using eating as a way to help control or deal with underlying kind of stressors or concerns.
There's a webinar at the end of the month for parents and caregivers relating to drug use and mental health. In March, there's a session on depression and anxiety, and in April, the focus is on the importance of healthy relationships. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
San Diego researchers have identified a jelly-like organism that is good at removing carbon from the ocean's surface. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson has the details.
A small ocean animal known as a salp may be helping keep significant amounts of excess carbon out of the atmosphere. The creature feeds on phytoplankton, microscopic plants that consume carbon. Scripps Institution of Oceanography researcher Maura Decima says salps reproduce quickly when they come across a phytoplankton bloom, and they can consume a lot.
So because they combine swimming with feeding, they're able to filter
hundreds of liters of water per day, pull out the particles from that water, and then from that they make these really large, heavy, fast-sinking fecal pellets or poop.
Those heavy pellets are full of carbon. Decima first noticed salps when they were clogging nets meant for collecting krill. After studying the animals, she thinks they could have a significant impact removing carbon from the atmosphere, which can affect the climate. It all centers on that heavy, sinking poop.
They just are delivered to death, and then the deeper that they get delivered, the longer that carbon is sequestered away from the atmosphere, and the more that helps us to take carbon from the atmosphere and keep it sequestered away.
Decima says the gelatinous animals are not always present in large numbers, but when they are, they can impact the carbon cycle and the food web on a fairly large scale. Salp abundance in the Southern Ocean grew significantly between 1920 and 2000. The findings are published in the journal Nature Communications. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Some changes coming up over the course of the next 24 hours. We will be talking about some soggy conditions with some showers around, but a lot of wind. Perhaps the bigger impact being the wind. There's also going to be some chill around. We'll catch a bit of a break from the activity later on this week, and then we'll talk about the weekend where you could see some additional wet weather return. All right, in effect on Tuesday, and specifically here for the afternoon to the evening, as we talk about Oceanside, San Diego, Chula Vista, some wind advisories out. These are high wind warnings. And talking about, again, the winds that can be quite gusty and even in some cases damaging over the higher terrain. So we're looking at wind advisories, lighter shaded purple, high wind warnings out, meaning more extreme types of wind out throughout the mountainous terrain. So a shower, as we talk about conditions for tonight, will slip down to 54. Let's open it up here, look area wide, as we'll fall down to 51 at Chula Vista, Oceanside 51, Borrego Springs 46, Mount Laguna dropping down to 34 degrees. And as we take a look at futurecast, you can also see, again, a little bit of cloudiness here later on tonight. And again into Tuesday morning where there will be some showers around. And the next system, you see it dropping down to the south, right? This is more of an inside slider. This will take more of its impacts out throughout the interior in terms of precipitation. But again, have the umbrella handy. Again, as we go throughout to Tuesday, we're going to be experiencing some showers around, especially as we work our way from some of the interior valleys out toward the coast. But even out toward the interior, there will be some showers around. Same Mount Laguna, high temperature there at 39. Chula Vista tops off at 58. Heading into Wednesday, dry. There goes your pocket of chill throughout the mountainous terrain points north and east, and that's where the snow will go. Here's your coastal forecast. A little cool, some showers Tuesday, returning by the weekend. Yes, it's going to be breezy as we go throughout the afternoon. We could say that here too throughout the interior valleys, remaining cool but bright and sunny later on in the week. There's your wet weather returning by the weekend, and quite brisk as we talk about the mountainous terrain. Very windy, those high wind warnings out. Cold Wednesday. Gradually we'll start to see temperatures starting to climb. Some showers returning by the weekend. And throughout the desert, notice here too, it's going to be windy Tuesday, not as windy as we go into midweek. Cool conditions continue. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Popick.
Egg prices are high, but how much money would you actually save if you raised your own chickens? If you're not ready to commit to starting a coop, a startup in Northern California is offering the option to rent before you buy. Sean Chitness has the story.
I don't think I want all of you guys out right now.
Eric Strother has always loved chickens. He remembers raising them as a kid.
I've always been a chicken geek.
And he knows he's not alone. Many people want to have them at home or at least give it a try.
A lot of people don't know where to start, and this provides a nice little starter kit to try it out.
When he heard that people were renting chickens on the East Coast and hadn't found anyone doing the same in the Bay Area, he saw an opportunity for a new business.
Chickens seem to be very much at home in them.
He created a tractor or a mobile chicken coop he can deliver with supplies, so customers can rent these backyard hens for 1 to 3 months.
It's really taken off. People seem to really enjoy it, and I get calls from people all over the Bay Area and beyond.
From his home in Sebastopol, Eric loads up his truck and travels to his next customer on weekends. You have to want to take on some new pets and watch out for them while they're with you. But of course, they help to put food on the table too.
I had a customer book a rental yesterday, and she was like, "It's all about the eggs. I gotta have those eggs."
He showed us some of the fresh eggs that had just been laid that morning. A daily delivery you can look forward to in the spring and summer, when each hen usually lays 1 egg a day. They lay a few eggs a week in the fall and winter. While you won't save money with this method, you may have a more reliable supply of eggs while you're renting the hens.
I love eggs. I've always loved eggs.
Kelly Citron was Eric's first customer. For her, it was about the chicken and the egg. Kelly remembers having a chicken when she was 7 years old, and now as an adult living in San Francisco, she wanted the experience again, along with the fresh eggs.
Having that connection with nature, yet living in the city, was a really great sort of balance.
She plans to have hens in her backyard permanently soon, which is part of the goal for Eric, helping people to realize they can take on the responsibility of chickens.
You can really get into it, become a chicken geek.
Converting more people to love these ladies as much as he does, 1 month at a time.
And that was Sean Chitness reporting. Rental prices, by the way, range from $250 to $475. And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. Where are your roses coming from? NPR's Morning Edition details the elaborate supply chain for flowers that are always in high demand on Valentine's Day. And then KPBS Midday Edition is talking about former Chargers and Aztecs coach Don Coryell finally getting into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya C. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.